Hello, my friends. I'm Dennis Prager. I'm going to my guest immediately. He has one segment, and I am very grateful to him. And he is Congressman Bruce Westerman, 4th Congressional District of Arkansas, who is a specialist in forest management, has written about it, has lived it. Congressman, thank you so much, and welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Hey, Dennis, great to be with you. I think this is the first time I've been on your show, so it's an honor for me to get to visit with you.
Well, it's very kind of you, sir, and I hope it's the first of many. So you have a bill before Congress with regard to forest management. Explain it to us, please.
Yeah, it's called the Resilient Federal Forest Act. We've actually passed it out of the House twice. It's gotten nowhere in the Senate. We have been able to get a few of the provisions attached to other legislation. We've got several provisions in the Farm Bill right now, but we're getting some pushback from Senate Democrats on that. But basically, Dennis, it's to help us be better stewards of this wonderful resource we have in our federal forest land. And it's been horribly mismanaged for several decades, and we're seeing the results of that now in all these catastrophic wildfires. And you can look at the data. The fires continue to be, they grow in intensity. They grow in quantity, and we're seeing more and more loss of life when these fires happen. So it's just a practical, common sense approach to give our forest managers more authority to do the job that they've been hired to do.
And that job would entail what that they have not been doing until now?
Thinning our forests mainly. Forests are living, dynamic organisms. We tend to think we can preserve them, but you can't preserve them. You preserve art. You preserve cucumbers when you kill them and pickle them and put them in a jar. But forests continue to grow, and they fill the growing space. They start competing for water and nutrients. They get weakened. You get insects and disease attack. And eventually, nature takes care of that with fire. And we've failed to manage our federal lands adequately for like I said, 3 decades or more, and we're paying the price for that now.
Who would want such mismanagement?
Well, the problem that we see is the Forest Service spends all this time and effort putting their management plans in place, and they go through a public posting, and they get held up in court by usually radical environmental groups that are, I think, they're more out to make money and make a name for themselves than they are about protecting our forests and having healthy forests, which have benefits for everyone. We get cleaner air, we get cleaner water, we get better wildlife habitat, and it can actually help rural communities if those forests are managed properly. But we're in a sad state right now with 192 million acres of federal forest land. A huge amount of that, millions and millions of acres, are rated as subject to catastrophic wildfire.
Because we have not used fires to manage that.
Yeah, it's more than just using fire. We need to thin, get a lot of the vegetation out, and then use fires on a regular interval to burn up the underbrush. What happens in these overstocked forests is you get a fire and you have ladder fuels that allows the fire to get up in the crowns, and then you get crown fires, and they're very devastating. You get winds behind them, dry conditions like we're seeing in California right now, and they literally become raging infernos. You've probably seen the videos. It looks like tornadic activity created by these wildfires.
That's right. It's exactly what it looks like. The death toll here is up to 48, by the way, and I'm sure it'll go over 50. It's as I said yesterday, had those people been shot, it would have been national news. But it happened by fire, and which you believe. Let me make this clear. You believe this could have been prevented in large measure.
It could greatly be mitigated. Now, when you look at the fire, the Woolsey fire in Southern California, you're not talking about a heavily forested area. This is more to do with what I would call scrub brush. You've got these very dry conditions, strong winds, and forest management probably wouldn't affect that area. But up in Northern California, around the Paradise Fire, where you've got these national forests that have been, they've been managed. They've just been mismanaged. You can work in what's called the wildland-urban interface to do a lot better job to create buffers around urban areas, around structures and populated areas, so that when you have fire, the intensity of that fire is not near as much, and you've got an opportunity to put it out before it causes damage to property and unfortunately, many lives.
You said that radical environmentalist groups were opposed to your bill and to the management that you would like to see. Two things, please. Can you name any of them? And secondly, what is their argument?
Well, if you look at the way this works, and probably up in Region 1, Montana, Idaho, and that area is where you see more abuse of the system, but it's all across the country. And these aren't what you would call a lot of times your mainstream environmental groups or your conservation groups that are trying to do good things. I don't think you'll find the Nature Conservancy. I know you won't find the conservation organizations like National Wild Turkey Federation, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Those groups understand the benefit of good forest management. But we have a law in this country called the Equal Access to Justice Act that individuals have figured out they can start their own nonprofit and they can sue the federal government under the Equal Access to Justice Act. And not only are they suing and stopping these management plans, the federal government's turning around and paying them their legal fees for suing them. So the taxpayers are getting hosed on both directions on that. So these are the groups that are advocating against forest management and putting sound practices, science-based practices into place. That if they were intellectually honest, they would say that a lot of them they blame climate change and global warming and all that, but in those regards, this is a positive feedback loop. The more fires you have, the more carbon you're putting into the atmosphere. So it makes that problem even worse. Where if we managed our forests, trees are natural sequesters of carbon. If we use wood in buildings, you're sequestering carbon there. So it's a win-win situation if you have healthy forests. And people who stop these management plans in the name of sound environmental practices are
right. So in the minute
double standard.
The minute we have remaining, what argument do they have? I can't imagine that. What it might be.
It always comes out that industry wants to clear cut the federal forest for profits. I mean, that's the argument that they have, and they say all this is fueled by big industry. Well, that's a lie too, because there's more timber in our country now than the industry can use, and really, the forests need industry much worse than industry needs the forest, and we could do a much better job.
It's very depressing. One final thing. You said the Southern California fires are not related to mismanagement, only the Northern California fires?
Well, when you get into areas where it's more scrub brush, you could do some land management practices to reduce the impact of those fires, but it's not nearly what we've seen in Northern California, what we've seen in Idaho and Montana, in Oregon and Washington, and other places across the country where you actually have what you would think of as more conventional forest with a lot of tall trees closely grown together.
Well, Congressman Bruce Westerman, thank you for your work, for your bill, and for your time.
Well, thank you, Dennis, and look forward to our next visit.
Good. Same here. 1-8 Prager-776. I really want to keep on top of this issue. And he didn't want to name the names of what he called radical environmentalist groups. And not pushy in this regard. But I would like to know how the Sierra Club, for example, came out on this issue. It's so amazing. The question for these left-wing groups is not, does it help, but who's behind it? So if industry is behind something, it is ipso facto bad, even if it will do good. It's such a morally broken compass. All right, much to talk about. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show, 1-8-PRAGER-776.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio.